Hi there, my name is Jay. Welcome to my channel. For the last 9-10 months or so, I've been living out of this car. I've been working out of it. I have a DC refrigerator in there. I've been doing all kinds of stuff, and for all that though, I found solar panel power was very, very important in my life. And before this trip, I actually learned a lot about solar for home reasons. So I was able to apply it to living in a car. And I was going to give you a tour of all the devices I use as far as solar panel and everything down. And I'll give you a list of everything I have, the cost of everything I have, and what I would do differently if I had to start over. The big thing is I actually had a lot of the material around, like the batteries. Those cost more than anything else in your whole system. So I had several of those around. I had solar panels around, so I used what was around. But if you're going to go start from fresh, from scrap, I'll give you a recommendation of what I would do if I was going to go from scrap. And this is also based on having nothing on the top of the car, because if you have anything else up there, you're going to have to rearrange it. The way I wanted it on this trip, I want to be able to go stealth, so I didn't want anything else on the top except just the solar panel. And a lot of people wouldn't even know what that was, except for this weird cable running out the other side. But I think it worked out well. I'm actually going to get a storage container later, so I'll have to rearrange everything. As it stands, the solar panel on top by itself fits just right, just perfectly. But if you have anything else up there, there's not going to be any room. So I mean, it's an SUV. There's not much room up there. It wasn't designed to hold a bunch of solar panels. In the winter months, like right now, I have a app on my phone that I use to determine where the sun's going to set and rise for video and things. But it tells you what the angle of the sun is at noon, or at the highest point, and it's 30.4 degrees now, which is very low, very low. And that's a horrible angle for the solar panel. I mean, 90 should be optimal, 30 is horrible. So a folding panel, I think, is really nice to get a little extra sun, because you're not going to get as good a sun as you normally could in the summertime. It's also great in the summer because you can park the car in the shade and then drag the panel out into the sun and then move it around. You have to move it around a lot, but you can move it around and still get some solar even though your car is not baking inside. I do have a 25-foot length cable that's connected inside. I just jam it under the door. I think over time it's gonna damage the cable, but you know, you just buy extra cables. They come separately, so if one of them gets damaged, you can just replace it with another cable. So, or you could even solder the length fixed. That's not too bad. I do keep a full electronics repair kit in my car, so I can solder a fix. I would just have to go somewhere with a good electric outlet, strong enough to run a soldering iron, and hopefully not set off any smoke alarms while I do that. But that's pretty much it. That connects to the MC4 connectors as well. And the solar panel's really nice. I highly recommend a folding solar panel that you can keep separate from the car. It helps so much in the summer months just to keep the car in the shade and have the solar panel out in the sun. Very nice. And on cloudy days, if you have them both out, you can still get plenty of solar as well. So definite plus. So it's theoretically 200 watts capable, although I get maybe 160 at a perfect time. But again, the top panel is bolted on. Unless I park my car at a huge angle, it just doesn't work as well these days. Here's my 12-volt folding solar panel. It's 100 watts, but I found effectively gives you 60 to 70% or 70 watts. It's not as efficient as the hard panel on top, but it's also kind of wobbly. On the top of the car is a Renogy 100 watt monocrystalline solar panel. I actually had several of these laying around at home because I had solar redundancy at my house, so I just grabbed one of them and put it up here, and it fits just right. I did have to drill an extra hole. There are 2 bolts here holding it into the cross rail. I had to drill an extra hole to get one in. It came with one, and then I attached it using a little metal crossbar and 2 bolts. And there's a washer, a lock washer, and a bolt there. The lock washer is important because after a lot of vibration, the bolts will undo itself, but the lock washer helps keep it in place. I've been checking them, and they have not come loose at all. So far so good. The cord that comes from the solar panel isn't long enough to go all the way through the window, so I looped it and then just zip tied it up here. The UV rays will weaken the zip ties after a while, so you will have to check on it. I did have to replace one broke on me, but the rest, this is actually really loose for some reason. I'm gonna have to tighten that up. But there's a whole bunch of zip ties. Can't go wrong with too many zip ties, right? And then I have these MC4 connectors, which the solar panel comes with. But then I made my own little length of cable, just long enough to go from there down and through the window. So I do run this cable up through here. There's a YouTube channel called SUVRVing. He did some tests where he ran the cables through the car, but then the gasket gets deformed and water will leak through. But having it go under definitely will avoid that. Problem is, if you crack your window enough, water and whatnot will go in, especially if the wind is coming from this direction. Rain will go in and snow will get in for sure. So I've used this pipe insulation. It's actually getting worn at the end, so I have to replace the front part. But I found that helps prevent things getting into your window. I will admit, one time recently, a little bit of snow came in through the window because the wind was coming in this direction and kind of got caught in there. So I need to put a little more insulation, but I think that'll help definitely with keeping the moisture out. And all the time I've driven into rain, I've never had rain creep up here like that. I thought it might, but I have not seen any bit of moisture come through. The big thing with your cable is you want it loose enough so when you open the car, it doesn't pull on the plastic cover. If it's too tight, you don't want it ripping this off. So there's a lot of room. That's why it looks kind of weird when the door's closed, because there's a lot of cable there. But you want enough room so it won't add too much pressure right there. And on the inside, there's enough slack here as well, so it opens and closes fine. Maybe too much slack. I probably should have made this cable shorter, but having it that way, I can still open and close it, and there's no tension anywhere. So all the times I've opened and closed these doors, nothing has gone wrong yet. But I do have a MC4 crimper and extra heads to repair any cables if I need to. I think that really helps, having that skill and the tools to fix a solar system if you set it up yourself, because things happen sometimes on road. And where are you going to find an MC4 crimper just like that? I don't know, you might be able to find some. Here's the second solar panel cable. Inside here I have the MC4 Y connector. That way I can connect the solar panel on the rooftop as well as the external folding solar panel. That way you have two inputs. Goes through one cable. And I actually have this little item. This is actually a fuse slash switch. I like it better than just having a fuse and then a switch. So if I want to turn off the solar panel, I can just hit the button and it cuts all power going to anything really except the battery. That's pretty nice. And this is a Renogy Rover 20 amp 12 or 24 volt charge controller. It's at 13.4 volts now, so pretty good. It's doing really well. It has really minimal controls, these 4 buttons. So I highly recommend spending extra money and getting a Bluetooth controller. That way it connects to your phone and you can pull all historical records as well as much more statistics than you can just looking at the screen right here. But so far so good. These aren't too expensive. I'll show you the price here and I'll give you a rundown of the total cost of all my gear. And altogether, not too bad. Now here's another one. This is actually the switch for the battery. I put this cover over it because I didn't want to accidentally push the button and disconnect the battery without first disconnecting the solar, which is bad for a charge controller. So you want to make sure if you're going to unplug anything, you unplug the battery before the solar. Otherwise it will burn out or could burn out your charge controller. So be careful with that. And over here I have a inverter. This is a 500 watt. I thought it was a pure sine wave when I bought it, but it's not. but it works well enough for most of my things. Now what this does is convert the DC power from the batteries to AC. There are a couple plugs here. Of course, when you're not using this, you must turn it off because it will drain your battery and you're not even doing anything with it. So just always leave it off. I always have it off unless I'm charging. There's only a couple things that I need with AC, so it's pretty much always off. And I keep this plugged in. This is my little backpacking cord, but I keep it plugged in so I can reach the gap here better, because normally the bed goes right here. This board itself actually rests on a couple of legs that stand on the batteries that are below, and I put this in here just as a blocker. So there's stuff inside and there's stuff here, and things won't crisscross because I don't want anything metal accidentally going in there and short circuiting, starting a fire. So this is, I find, a nice wall, and I'll show you what's underneath. Once I flip this board over, it's all screwed on. Here's a series of cables, and they'll go to 2 AGM batteries. They are both 100 amp hour. So with AGM you can only drain it 50%. So I should get 1200 watt hours of battery. I'll show you the little math down here, but that should be the amount of power that I can drain safely out of these two. And there's cables everywhere. I tried to use the same length connectors. They're connected in parallel, but I had to use this long one. I don't know, but they're both thick enough that I don't think there's much difference in how they connect, but that's pretty much the gist of it. I have most things going to the batteries, but I do have a couple of oddities. This is a little load that goes to the charge controller, and the charge controller controls that, and that goes to my little 3-plug adapter. And this over here, this is actually a separate lone cigarette adapter. That's because that's on a 10 amp fuse, so it can pull up to 120 watts. Now this cannot handle that much at all because it's just connected to the load in the charge controller. That can handle much more. So anything heavier duty, I'll connect to that. These are just minor, like the fridge and regular USB devices here and there. That's pretty much it. And there are my batteries. They are 75 pounds each, quite heavy, and I try to keep them over here, so if I'm sitting on that side it balances out the car when I'm driving around. Plus underneath the bed is perfect, fits right down there. It's good every once in a while to go down here and just check everything, make sure everything's tight, because you don't know what the vibration of driving on gravel roads a lot will do, and you definitely don't want these cables popping off and then short-circuiting somehow, which could potentially cause a fire. So you just want to be extra safe with these. With the Renogy Rover, you can plug in a load. So I actually plugged into this one there. Oops, that was me hitting the refrigerator buttons. And I found for some reason I could run 2 plugs. So this is a car adapter just to have 2 USB ports, and the refrigerator's here. For some reason, if I plug in anything else, it overloads the load on the charge controller, and then you actually have to push a button on the charge controller. You can't reset it with the Bluetooth module. So I just limit it to the 2, and it's worked fine for me now. If I really need anything else, I have this, like I mentioned. It's a 10 amp fuse, so it's capable of much more power than the other one anyway. So I just plug stuff into there, like an additional USB power port or something like that. This little L bracket is actually, well, it's currently charging a battery bank, but normally it's connected to an overhead light. And I'll show you the link below of what it's there. I can't turn it on right now because it's not plugged in, but it's basically a strip light, and it provides any light that I want over the bed area at night. It works really well, and it's minimal draw at lowest power. It's maybe 500 milliamps, so pretty light. So it's really nice. I don't use it quite as often as you would think during the normal night. I actually use this guy of all things. I brought it as a backup, but I usually just put it over the hammock here and then point it down on myself, and I can kind of see whatever's going on. And it uses solar to charge. There have been a few times where it went out because I ran out of power, but you just put it out in the sun for a while and it lasts forever on low. So No worries. I actually really like that, and I've been using that a lot, so it's kind of weird, but it's nice having that light as well. And I think if I ran this strip down the middle of the car, I didn't want to just like be gluing things to the rooftop here, but I think I'd use it more often because it'd be more centralized instead of off to the side. But it's very useful light. The brunt of my power goes towards, well, if it's not the laptop, it's this refrigerator. It's an Alpicool 22-liter fridge. It's very nice. It's been working excellently so far. You can use it as a freezer or a fridge, one or the other. It's just one big compartment in there. You got to pick the temperature that you want. But it also comes with this little USB port here. And I plug my phone into it most often. I didn't think I was going to use it initially, but I use it all the time for charging anything. Very useful. And then once you open it, you'll notice it's dark and a light turns on. There's a little light in there. And I'll give you a review of the fridge in the future, but it's roomy enough to hold most things that I need, like even a half-gallon carton of milk. And there's a little ice cube tray here, but I never use it because I can't open this because the door gets stuck on this. But there's no point. The ice cube tray is tiny. You'll get little cubes. But overall, this is what's used most often. Lately, it hasn't been running much because, well, it's been below freezing. It's actually protecting the contents from freezing more than anything these days. But during the summer months, it ran quite often, and it was great to go on our backpacking trips. The other thing too is when you think about how much battery power you need to tally up what is going to consume power to figure out how much you need. And I try to base it on 3 to 4 days of having no sun at all to be able to run the fridge the whole time. Maybe not the laptop because that's a high drain device, but at least the fridge for 3 or 4 days with no power at all. Now I'll show you the math I did below, but that's what I base it on, and so far it's been working out really well. The 4Runner and the Tacomas, I found out, have AC outlets. They're capable of putting out 100 or 400 watts of power. When you drive though, it's 100 watts. So I actually have a battery charger plugged into it. So this is actually a 50 watt charger, and that goes right into the batteries themselves. I use this so when I'm driving, I'll turn on that plug and this will actually charge the battery while I drive, up to about 50 watts, which isn't super strong, but better than nothing. Now, some of you I know are thinking, Jay, do you have a battery isolator? Now, a battery isolator is something that connects the car's electrical system to the battery, so as the engine's on, it can charge it while it's going. And it will disconnect it if the engine's off. So it's a safe way to charge it. But the problem is I didn't want, it's a newer car. It was only 2 years old. I didn't want to be putting holes through the firewall in the middle and run thick gauge cable all the way to the back. So I decided not to do that. If you have a van, an older van or something, that's probably a good option for you, but I did not want to mess with all that. And plus you'd have to run a thick enough gauge cable to run all the way to the battery to get a good current in, so I did not do that. I did not offer that. Now with the AC charger that I have in the back, believe it or not, on Vancouver Island, we spent 3 weeks there. We only had a few days of sun. Most of it was really cloudy, or a lot of it was rainy, but I was able to still have enough power to run the fridge the whole time. It wasn't super hot, so it didn't run super a lot, but we did have it pretty full because we had Tina's food as well as my food in there. But because of our driving, I used that charger, and it was able to keep us running for the entire 3 weeks. We were low for a while, and I didn't use my laptop at all because of that. But because of that extra charger, I believe we were able to go 3 weeks with hardly any sun and still keep the fridge running. So I think having a backup is essential, especially if you're planning on using your fridge all the time. If there was a period where we were out of power, we would definitely have to eat and drink everything out of there and maybe get ice or something, but I didn't want to have to resort to that, and it worked out really well. So having an additional way of charging your batteries, I think, is a must. One thing living in a car, it's tight quarters and you will snag cables all the time. And one of the things that charging all the time or most often is my phone. And I've always used these little magnetic adapters, and it comes with a couple of these cables and just connects right in. I did drop my phone, but it charges via magnet. And what's nice is if you accidentally snag it, comes right off and you don't break anything, nothing gets thrown. So I highly recommend it. The only downside is you have to be careful with this cable because it's magnetized, and if you drop it on the ground, it will just pull up anything magnetic and just stick all in there. It's horrible. This part as well will also pull in magnetic items, but so far so good. I could even transfer data with it with the set I have, as long as the light side is up. And it's super useful when you're driving. You just put this on your phone adapter and you just clip, and there's no plug unplug, and there's no risk of damaging the port from plugging and unplugging all the time. It's easy to unplug. And there's a lot of times, I will tell you, where I had it plugged in the car, in the phone holder, and I would just grab my phone and run, and it snaps off. If I didn't have that magnetic adapter, it could have damaged something. But here it is again. Pretty nice, huh? I really like that. So I don't know, it's up to you, but I recommend it. I'm actually using these folding solar panels to charge a big battery bank. I usually use this to charge my phone, but I've been here a while and it's getting drained. But I usually plug this into the car's cigarette outlet and charge it while it's driving. And then when I'm parked, I charge my phone off that. So it's kind of my main source of power lately. And I think it's nice because it doesn't drain the solar at all, no matter how much I use my phone. But of course, when you sit still for too long, it gets drained. And this is one of those battery banks with 2 inputs, so it charges pretty quickly. And I'm just using these folding solar panels to back up as a backup power source to charge it up, because that is independent of solar panel. And I want to edit videos today, so I was going to use up a lot of solar power. They're pretty nice to have around as a backup. If I didn't have any, I probably would not buy any. But if you had some around, I would say bring them and use them as a backup charger for your battery banks. I've also found another advantage of having a solar system is if you can use it to jumpstart your car battery, that would make it multi-purpose. I used to always have one of those battery banks to jumpstart your car in case your batteries died. And if you're in the middle of nowhere by yourself, I think it's super important that you have a means to do that. My plan, if my car's battery dies, is just to run a jumper cable to the batteries. I have 2 12-volt batteries back here, so all I have to do is connect them, let them sit for a while so they actually charge the car battery, and then start. So that's my backup now. Just have jumper cables with you. In my whole time on the road so far, I did have to jump someone else, not myself. So having jumper cables always kind of helps, and I keep it kind of easily accessible in the back. Although I've only used it once, so kind of nice. So the solar power system also works as a backup power for your car. So it's very handy and useful to have around if you're gonna be by yourself in the middle of nowhere quite a lot.
The total cost of the setup was $1,156. But I already had the Renogy 100 watt roof panel and 2 of the AGM batteries, as well as a few other minor things. It cost me $398 more to put it all together, including the solar panels. So for me, this was the right direction. If you start from nothing and you don't buy the crimper and bought 1 battery, it would cost $573 for 600 watt hours of usable power, not including the solar panels. These days, there are significantly lighter and smaller portable power stations that provide about the same power for a little bit cheaper and far less complexity and weight. If you are starting from nothing and want an easy setup, I highly recommend one of these devices. These new devices all have lithium batteries, so you should be able to drain them all the way. The only downside is if a component of it breaks, you would have to probably replace the whole thing. But overall, the smaller size, significant less weight, and reduced complexity would be more than worthwhile to the average person. I have never used these products, but from the reviews I've seen of them, they seem reliable and work very well. The Jackery portable power station seems to be a brand that's been around for quite a bit lately, and their 518 watt hour device costs $500. The Rockpel's 500 watt portable power station has 540 watt hours and costs $459. I'm uncertain exactly what type of solar connectors they take, so you may have to do some further research if you decide on getting these two devices, but I would look into them before building out an entirely new solar setup. As of this moment, both seem to have considerable coupon discounts, so wait for a good deal and you should get a much better deal than the prices I just listed. Well, I hope all this answered any questions that any of you may have had regarding my solar setup, and I wish good luck to anybody out there who wants to get on the road with a little portable power supply. I know it's not as fun to think about, but if you don't already know the math of amps times volts equals watts to determine electricity usage and capacity, I highly recommend doing it. It will help you in the long run plan out your trips as well as decide which size portable power bank to get. I would recommend at least the 500 watt hour type ones if you're going to have a refrigerator. But depending on circumstances, if you have a drone or something, that will drain that thing so quick, you may want something much bigger. Thank you for watching, and you have a great day now.